It was a cold, lonely day. An old woman, weak and hungry, walked from door to door begging for a little food. Most people turned her away. No one cared. But when she knocked on one last door, the man who opened it froze, because the woman begging before him was his own lost mother. Hello, friends. Welcome to our story. Before we begin, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. Toronto, Dubai, maybe Paris or Tokyo. We'd love to know. He arrived home the way he always had. Neat shoes, neat thoughts, a careful silence that folded itself around him like a coat. The city at dusk blurred into headlights and cold breath. Armand walked the familiar route that cut through a neighborhood of low houses and shuttered shops. The path he took when he needed to think or when he needed to forget thinking at all. Tonight, he carried nothing more than a small parcel from the restaurant he managed. Leftover stew, wrapped in paper, still warm from the kitchen's hum. The wind was a thief of warmth, picking at the hems of his coat and whipping the stray locks of hair from his forehead. He heard the soft shuffle before he saw her, the rhythm of someone who had been walking for hours, the weary sway of a body that held too many winters. A hunched figure stood under the dim street lamp, shoulders folded inward as if trying to keep a private fire from extinguishing. Her clothes were a patchwork of past better days, a shawl with a hole at the elbow, a dress faded by more summers than anyone could count, shoes that once fit and now clung to the soles like relics. Her face, when the light finally found it, was a map of survival, deep lines carved by grief and laughter, both. What stopped Armand was not her poverty, nor the humble plea she whispered to the passing city. It was her eyes. Those eyes were the same wide, waiting eyes that had followed him across many small rooms of his childhood. They were the eyes that had kissed scrapes and celebrated tiny victories. They belonged to his mother, his Maya, though time had turned her hair the color of winter ash. For a beat he could have walked away and let the world carry on its business of ignoring single mothers and single evenings. He could have kept his hand safe in his pockets, counted his steps, let the city's indifference be the cushion for his own comfortable life. But the paper bag in his hand felt heavier than it should. It was a heaviness full of unspent words and an ache that made him step forward. Just a piece of bread. Beta, she said, voice thin as a thread, but steady enough. She did not look at him, as if she had practiced the humility of begging so long that the face of the giver no longer mattered. The few people who passed glanced, turned away, or clutched their own bags tighter. Charity, for many, is easier when it is anonymous. Armand's mouth went dry. The city noise dimmed until the only sound left was the soft rustle of his clothes. Ma? The word slipped from him like a prayer and landed between them, tremulous and unsure. She froze. The corners of her mouth twitched, not from surprise, but from a lifetime of disbelief. Beta? She echoed, as if testing the shape of the sound in a world that had rearranged itself without her. He stepped closer. The smell of the stew mingled with the cold air and somehow felt like home. It's me, Armand. Saying his name made something inside him unclench. He reached out before rational thought could pull his hand back, touching the ragged shawl as if to confirm she was real. Her hands were smaller than he remembered, laced with veins like fine threads and shaking in a way that wasn't entirely from the cold. She looked at his hand, then at his face, and memory threw itself forward in bright, painful flashes. A boy with scraped knees, a tiny hand elusive in the rush of a flood, a neighborhood screaming and collapsing into water, a mother calling his name until her voice was hoarse. "Armin," she whispered, and the name was an anchor thrown into a sea that had been too long placid with loss. Around them the world continued, taxi horns, a child laughing in the distance, someone closing a shop. Those sounds were like a film played in another room. For Armin and his mother, time folded. She reached for him with hands that had learned to be cautious with joy. He gathered her, as if the collecting of that small, fierce piece of his childhood could mend the parts of him that had known only hunger and fear. She breathed, tears surprising her eyes, tracking salt down weathered cheeks. "Where did you go? We looked for you for—" Her words snagged on years of questions and fell away. Armand guided her toward a bench under the lamp. He sat and she sat, and the cold tried to pry them apart, but could not find purchase. He placed the paper parcel between them. "I manage a restaurant now," he said, as if the announcement could stitch some dignity onto the evening. "Tonight the chef sent me home with extra. I thought—" He stopped, laughter and tears unable to occupy the same space. "I thought you might be hungry. Hello, friends. Welcome to our story. Before we begin, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. Toronto, Dubai, maybe Paris or Tokyo. We'd love to know." She laughed then, a sound like wind through dry leaves, equal parts joy and shock. "Hungry?" she repeated, then sagged forward until her forehead rested on his shoulder. "Ma always cooked, so we never missed bread," she murmured, voice muffled. "After the flood, after your father died, we couldn't find you. They said—" She swallowed, a small, brave thing. "They said you were gone." They ate like people who had been given permission to exist again. The stew tasted like warmth and forgiveness, like years of apologies in a single spoonful. Armand watched her eat, memorizing the slow way she took nourishment now, aware that each bite might become a story he would tell himself on hard nights. When the soup was finished, she sat back, hands folded in her lap as if to preserve the memory of warmth. The street lamp hummed. A stray cat slunk by, indifferent to the reunion. "You could have been anywhere," she said, voice thin but steady. Armand picked at a loose thread on the parcel. "I was lost," he confessed. "After the flood, I was alone for a long time. I learned to survive. I learned to hide myself in plain sight." He searched her face, looking for evidence of the years that had robbed them. "I wasn't sure you'd remember me. I thought maybe you would have another family, or that you had—" His voice broke. He swallowed the rest. She lifted her hand and placed it on his cheek, the gesture awkward with age, but fierce in its intent. "My son," she said simply. No sermons, no recriminations, just a naming that set things back in their proper order. Her thumb traced a scar along his jawline he had forgotten he had, a small geography of childhood scraped on concrete. "You found me tonight," she added, as if the sentence itself were not enough, and yet it was everything. They spoke for hours that folded like paper, stories of lost years, of small triumphs and humiliations, of the father who had once laughed too loud in a kitchen that now only lived in memory. Armand told her about the restaurant, about the people who had been kind enough to teach him skills and hard enough to keep him moving. She told him about the neighborhood, about the neighbors who had tried to help, and the new families who had moved in and moved out. The city, which had felt hollow to him when he walked it alone, felt full now with the small, human sound of two people repairing a seam. At some point, a woman with a stroller paused and looked at them, at the shawl, at the paper bag. Her eyes softened. She reached into her bag and produced a small packet of biscuits, offering them with a shy smile. It was an ordinary act of ordinary people. It mattered like a bridge. Another passerby, a young man, added a folded blanket from his car trunk, insisting she take it. The neighborhood, which had been a backdrop to pain and survival, offered up small pieces of itself like apologies. Armand and his mother accepted without ceremony. Gifts were not what they needed, not truly. They needed threads of proof that life could still be ordinary, enough to allow forgiveness. The food was not a triumph. It was a beginning. When the night finally folded into a deeper, peaceful darkness, Armand helped his mother to a small guest room in a community shelter where compassionate volunteers had set out cots for winter. He paid for her lodging with hands that trembled more from emotion than from the cold. They lay side by side for the first time in years, the space between them a soft territory where sleep came slow but honest. Before sleep took him, his mother whispered, "You were my prayer, Armand. I called for you in the night and in the morning and somewhere between hope and hunger. I kept your name alive." Her hand found his and held on. No letting go this time. Armand kissed the back of her hand, ridiculous, and forever a little boy in that gesture. "Ma," he said, the word full of the weight he had carried alone for years. "I was lost, but I found you, and now I'll keep you. No more nights on the cold street." The promise was small and terribly human. It was not the end of hardship. There would be forms to fill, misunderstandings to smooth, pride to rebuild. There would be days when the ghosts of the flood would return in noise and smell and the echo of lost time. But there would also be mornings of shared tea, of laughter over small things, of a mother rediscovering the lines, of her son's face with the patient curiosity of one who recognizes a treasure outside. The city breathed its indifferent breath. But inside that small, warm room, two souls stitched by memory and hunger found their place. The boy who had become a man promised himself to the woman who had never stopped being his mother. The poor mother who had begged for food from a city that had many hands but few hearts, discovered that sometimes kindness arrives disguised, not as a charity you expect, but as a son who remembers names and brings home warmth. When morning came, the world had not changed its ways. Yet for Armand and his ma, the day was new. They walked out into the light together, two people with the same blood, different maps of the past, moving forward with a small parcel of stew and a pocket full of second chances. Subscribe to the channel. Also, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. Toronto, Dubai, maybe Paris or Tokyo. We'd love to know.